Hello and welcome to a brand new show called The Recap. My name is Sam Sharma. Today we're going to tell you about the most interesting things that happened during the week that we think are important and that we think that you should know. So without further ado, let's just get right into it. Well, before I start, I want to just take this opportunity to thank OpIndia and Nupur for having me do an episode for them. This is an opportunity that I'm really excited about, and this is an opportunity that I'm very honored to have. So again, I really appreciate you having me on. Okay, now, so for our first story of the day, if you just do a cursory search on curbing freedom of expression in India or threat to freedom of expression in India and threat to the press in India, you'll find tens, if not hundreds, of articles talking about how freedom of expression and the freedom of the press is under grave threat in India. And one of the things that you'll find in most, not all, definitely not all, but I think one of the things that you'll find in most of the articles is there's a common link. And that link is that they will all say that ever since the Modi government got elected, the freedom of expression and the freedom of the press are under grave threat. And of course, there have been many prominent journalists who have come out and who have been very outspoken against the Modi government that ever since Modi government's election, the freedom of the press has been curtailed and the press is being intimidated and threatened. So obviously, the narrative is that before the Modi government got elected, things were fine. But after the Modi government got elected, the Hindu nationalists and the Hindu fascists, they've been threatening to curb freedom of expression and they've been threatening to curb the freedom of the press. And there's a great article in OpIndia about how these journalists have come out and spoken out against the BJP government that I think you should go check out. The link to that article is provided in the description below as well. Now, the reason I give you this preface is because there's a journalist called Rohit Sardana. He's a journalist that works for Aaj Tak. He's a pretty prominent person, and he is finding himself right now in a bit of a bother. He sent out a tweet which from my thinking and from my understanding, and when I read the tweet, it's actually a pretty reasonable tweet. But he sent out a tweet which essentially said that in Bollywood, there's been, sexy Durga, there's been sexy Radha, and there are all these women in either Indian history or Indian mythology that are respected within Hindu communities, and they have been sexualized in Bollywood. And that would never happen to a female figure in Christianity or a female figure in Islam, which I think is a pretty valid point, because I don't think that will happen. If something like that happened, there will be blood on the streets and riots across the country. And you know what? It's kind of what happened after that tweet. So a large number of Christians and Muslims, both Shia and Sunni, have been protesting against Mr. Sardana, and they've been asking for not just his resignation or not just his firing from Aaj Tak, but they're also asking for his arrest. Arrest for using his freedom of expression, by the way. So apparently some police cases have been filed against Mr. Sardana in Hyderabad, in Mumbai, and in other cities as well. And the members of a group called Anjuman-e-Imamia staged a big protest outside the Aaj Tak offices in Bangalore, where they vandalized some property as well. And not just that, there's actually also a video online of a Shia preacher, I believe, who is offering a bounty of 1 crore rupees to anyone who will behead Rohit Sardana. Do you hear what that sound is? That's the sound of Rohit Sardana being thrown under the bus by all of his press peers. Now, everybody remembers when that video came out of the Karani Sena and of the person from the BJP when he was asking for Deepika Padukone's head. And I've done a couple of videos about it myself that you can go see, where I have vehemently opposed language like that. And language and threats like that have no place in India. They have no place in a democracy. But unfortunately, from the coterie of journalists and all the eminent journalists that had come out and spoken against the Modi government for curtailing and curbing and threatening the freedom of the press, they have been conspicuously silent on this issue and on defending Rohit Sardana. A few journalists have come out in support of him, but these are again journalists that are outspoken like Mr. Sardana himself. But the stalwarts of Indian journalism, the so-called Lutyens crowd as they're fondly called, none of them have come out and said anything about in support of Mr. Sardana. If you don't abide by the party line and if you don't drink the Kool-Aid, you don't get solidarity. As has been the case in India for a few decades, unfortunately, a mainstream journalist has to be of a certain mold. That mold being you have to be anti-Hindu, you have to be anti-right. And I distinguish between Hindu and right because people can be Hindu but not be on the right, and people can be non-Hindu but still be on the right. So this is very telling. And this is unfortunately why a lot of people in India have lost so much faith in the media. Journalism comes at a piece of news with extreme bias and prejudice. And it's a sad state of affairs. And that's something that needs to be called out on every platform. And that's something that we need to create a groundswell to counter. All right, for our next bit of news, everybody knows that there is an election coming up in Gujarat and things are heating up in the state as would be expected. And to add to the heat, there is a archbishop from Gandhinagar who wrote a letter which was addressed to all Christians of India, and it was urging them to vote against nationalist forces that are threatening to take over the country. Now, I don't know if this letter was meant to be as insidious as it sounds, but unfortunately it has come off as that. Firstly, because for some reason in the press and for some reason in popular parlance, being a nationalist has almost become a swear word. Like wanting a strong country, wanting a prosperous country, and wanting to protect and defend your culture has somehow become a swear word. And secondly, also, is that by urging Christians to vote against nationalist forces, the Archbishop is either knowingly or unknowingly insinuating that Christians should not and cannot be nationalists. And I take a lot of offense to that. Because taking just one example, and there are numerous examples in numerous professions and occupations and industries, but taking just one example, taking the military, there have been numerous Christians who have enlisted into the military and sacrificed their lives for the country. There have been numerous heads of different branches of the military as well. And of course, I don't want to speak for them, but I think it's pretty safe to assume that all of them joined the military because they wanted a strong India, because they wanted a prosperous India, because they wanted to protect and defend India from those who would wish it harm. So I think that's what I take a lot of offense to as well. Another reason why this is a dangerous precedent, and it's very important that we realize this, and it's very important that we call this out, is because a religious leader and a religious organization, particularly the church, because it's important to understand that the church is a lot more organized than the Hindu system is. And because of that, a religious leader tends to have a lot of influence over his community or her community. So by writing this letter and by urging and by trying to influence where Christians vote in this election, the church in Gandhinagar is unfortunately violating a principle that is sacrosanct in a democracy, which is the separation of church and state. So of course, he goes on to say strange things like human rights are being violated, the constitutional rights are being trampled, not a single day goes without an attack on our churches, church personnel, faithful, or institution. And again, he makes these outlandish claims, but there is no evidence attached to corroborate these claims. In fact, there have been a couple of articles, one in OpIndia itself, and the link that I will provide down below, which has actually shown that a lot of these church attacks, so to say, that occurred over the past couple of years didn't really have any religious motivation to them at all. Again, the link to that article is provided in the description below, so I would highly recommend that you go check that out and help debunk this hoax. Now, another thing that he goes on to say in the letter, which I thought was very interesting, is kind of a double standard that he exposes while writing this letter, and I'll tell you exactly what I mean. So he writes, "The recitation of the Holy Rosary at individual, community, family, and parish levels will be of great help. Encourage the faithful to pray the Rosary. Time and again, the Rosary has proved to be a protective hand. History bears witness to this statement. It saved Europe during the victory at Lepanto from being taken over by people of other faith." And that last statement that I read there, that's a pretty nationalist statement to make. So saying that Christians were able to defend their land from people of other faith who wished them harm, that's a pretty nationalist thing to say. And that's what a lot of nationalists wish for their country. The nationalists want their country to be safe from external threat. That's what being a nationalist is all about too. So it's an unfortunate letter, and unfortunately, because of the way it's written and because of the things that are in the letter, it's also an insidious letter. And it's important that we counter this agenda. And it's important that we call out and we fight religious institutions, no matter which religious affiliation they have. It's important that we call out and we fight back their attempts to meddle in elections, because that's very harmful for a democracy. That's a very slippery slope, in my opinion. Now, also in other news, the Global Entrepreneurship Summit has been taking place in Hyderabad between the 28th and the 30th of November. And the US delegation that is attending the summit is being led by Ivanka Trump, who's the daughter of President Trump and also an advisor to him. And she's also an entrepreneur herself. One of the reasons why the US delegation is being led by Ivanka Trump is because the theme of this year's Global Entrepreneurship Summit is empowering women and promoting women entrepreneurs. And by all accounts, it's been a very successful event. Entrepreneurs from 127 countries have attended the event. But a couple of interesting things have also happened at this event. So first of all, there was a huge controversy when the Niti Aayog announced that NDTV has been chosen as the partner of this event, as the media partner of this event. And a lot of people were, of course, angry about it on Twitter and social media in general. But it turns out later that the Niti Aayog clarified, and they said that NDTV was only a partner for just one event, which was called Shuruat Bus. And that's fine. That's fine. You want to extend that olive branch to NDTV, and there's nothing wrong with that. But what I do find a little baffling is the inclusion of Shobha Dey as a speaker in the event. So Shobha Dey, if people don't really know, is an author and a regular columnist in many newspapers. Now, I'm not particularly fond of her. I don't even think she's very talented. But because she's part of the left liberal media, she's seen as edgy. And the reason that I find it baffling is that there are many other women authors and women leaders that would be a much better choice for this event than someone who has talked about people in India with such contempt. One example of that is an article that she wrote just right before the event as well. I mean, just rubbing it in the face a little bit here. So this article is a real piece of work. And this article also kind of encapsulates her body of work in a really good way too. And let me read you a little bit of this article because it truly needs to be heard to be believed. So the article talks about Ivanka Trump's visit to India, and first of all, the title kind of gives it away about what you're going to expect from the rest of the article. So it's called Ivanka Ji, Are You President of America? Then it goes on to have other gems within the article. One of them being, we were so happy that such a great lady looking like a Barbie doll was honoring us by attending a meeting. So much security, madam. I was thinking, who is this VVIP coming to Hyderabad? Every television channel I watched was only showing a tall, beautiful blonde lady. But sorry, madam, I didn't know your name and I was not sure who you are or why you were coming here. And then other gems like, anyway, I asked all those Bandukwala police people guarding the streets why there was so much high security bandobast for a blonde lady who's not the president of America. And then she finishes the article with an absolute cracker saying, on a serious note, madam, you came, made a speech, told our women they're great and all that, but we want to know after this, what? You saw how hospitable we are to guests. You ate a feast with so many special dishes, sitting at a table for 101 people in the Falaknuma Palace. Good, good. Now you will go back and brief your daddy, but not mommy, about what you saw, who you met. Daddy is a clever man. As his official advisor, you are even more clever. So, madam, what will you tell Trumpji? He will ask, how many towers did you manage to sell in India? And you will reply, I was not there to sell towers, but to empower with the women of India. And then daddy will lose interest and talk about Mexicans. So, I want to just do an exercise quickly. This exercise is called the switcheroo. This is where we take the shoe from one foot and we put the shoe on the other foot. Now, just imagine if a self-proclaimed Hindu who's also a BJP supporter wrote that article instead of Shobha Dey. Can you imagine the charges and the hellfire of sexism and chauvinism that would rain down on his or her head if it was that person who had written this article? That's an incredible double standard in the media that is very important to challenge. Because if you're a left liberal, you can say whatever you want because you're on their side. Because you're the one who's on everybody's side. You're the one who cares about everybody's rights and freedoms. So because you are that, you get a pass and you get to say whatever you want about anybody you want and nobody can say anything. So yeah, I think it's a very interesting choice, to put it as mildly as I possibly can, to have her as a guest in an event trying to honor and promote women entrepreneurs. I think they could have chosen someone better, but what do I know? I'm just a guy talking to a camera. All right, and that was the recap. Now, before I go, I want to leave you with a question, and this is going to be the question of the day. Do you think that there's an implicit bias in the media today, and what do you think we can do to counter that as just ordinary people? In my opinion, I think it's important to create a groundswell of support and a community, which what we are trying to do here with this show and with my channel too. And building a big enough community, we build a big enough voice that can then again go ahead and counter that propaganda. That's my opinion. I would love to hear what you think, so please get involved and comment below. All right, and that's the show. Thank you very much for watching. I appreciate you. Again, if you're enjoying the show, if you enjoyed today's show, please like the show, please share the show with people, and subscribe to the OpIndia channel. They're a fantastic channel and they're putting out some great work. And you can go ahead and check out my channel as well. It's called The Sam Sharma Show. The link to the channel is provided in the description below. And again, thank you for watching. You've been recapped. I've been Sam Sharma, and I'll see you soon.